to the Nurse Life Coach Academy podcast, where Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, talk all about how to get certified and practice professionally as a nurse life coach.
All right. Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. This is the Nurse Life Coach edition, and I am so excited to interview Nicole Lohonen. And she is, God, you've been in my world for 3 years. She is a past mentee of mine and one of the first nurse coaches in the country to really bring a nurse coach department, full-time nurse coach department to her organization. She's been a trailblazer. And we're going to just interview you, Nicole, about your story, what you've learned, and the outlook, and anything else you want to add in. So do you want to just introduce yourself really quick?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura, for having me. So my name's Nicole. I've been a nurse for going on 16 years, and coaching, I just kind of happened to stumble upon. Yay, Facebook. But I just stumbled upon that and just kind of knew instinctively that oh my gosh, this is what I've been praying for forever, of how I really wanted to practice nursing. So I went for it, got trained back in 2021. And at the time, we had to do 60 hours of, coaching practice. So that was kind of where, I had to find volunteers. So I just started out by asking my coworkers. And that was kind of really where, I had gone into coaching with, this is my way out. Yay. This is my way out of here forever. But anyway, that kind of really sparked something in me to well, this is helping me personally, and this is helping other nurses. And I think this could be kind of a big answer as to, I think, what a lot of nurses experience at the bedside needs to change, but they just feel disempowered or don't know how necessarily to go about it. And there's a lot of that mindset. And I had guilty of the same mindset of, what's one person going to change anything? We're just stuck this way forever, and the only way out is to escape. And so that's kind of a really brief how I got into nurse coaching in the first place, and how I ended up in your corner with the Successful Nurse Coaches. Was I was gung-ho on private practice. I was gonna maybe do a little good on the way out, but I was going full force out of here.
You're a little good on the way out, but I'm on my way out.
Yeah. So funny how, the very thing that you're trying to escape from is a lot of times the place where you're actually called to be. And I really felt that. But for me, it wasn't until I was in the coaching program, doing the work, getting into, mentorship, thinking I'm following one path, and then, God shows up and he's like, actually,
Job for you, Nicole.
I'm like, wait, what? That's not what I was doing. It was not my plan. So here we are now, almost going on 3 years later. And I mean, watching this nurse coach thing spread like wildfire, like crazy throughout my organization. So that's just a little brief history of kind of what I'm doing now. And again, God's blessed me with, what I originally wanted was private practice. So I have that small little side thing, and he's brought me people, to help, start up where they're at, in their neck of the woods. And so that's been really fun.
How many hours of coaching did it take you before you felt confident enough? This is going to be a real trick question, but I'm thinking of current students, and I'm thinking of nurse coaches that have just graduated that want to do what you're doing. Spoiler alert, she didn't feel confident. She just did it. But because I was her mentor when we did this. But I think people always ask, they just don't feel prepared to do what you did. And I know you didn't feel prepared to do, we would just step by step do it. When did it start feeling a little less scary for you to be in this role?
I think the Yeah, because I was terrified at first. I mean, firsthand, just
Yeah.
that wrestle with like, but I said I wanted to do this, but now I'm going to be doing this.
Yeah.
And like the intimidation of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was terrified to go to leadership, even sit
Right.
in meetings with them, but I was comfortable with my manager and kind of just shared that. And, you know, I was like, I don't know, I have this opportunity, but I was scared because I'm like, for one, I don't know how to create programs. I've never done anything like this before, nor do I have actually the desire to necessarily do that.
Right.
But again, this is kind of where my, relationship with God kind of came into play because I remember him just calming me internally by just saying, do what you were taught to do. Like, do what
Mm.
you were trained to do. What, like, you're great with people one to one. That's all you need to do. So I said, okay, I'm going to lay it out that way. And
Yeah.
that's how what I learned, in nurse coaching, what I learned about the coaching container, how to set one up, what I learned, as far as, a good time frame to establish a relationship, and really that's what I did. I said, okay, well, I want to meet
Yeah.
with people like maybe twice a month, let's start with who's struggling, right? Who was I was burnt out, tired,
Hmm.
exhausted, trying to escape, and even a lot of our bedside team was feeling that way too, or there was a lot of hopelessness, or, I don't know how to change anything, but there's, the complaints in the break room. So I kind of just took what I was here saying around and said, hey, do you
Yeah.
want to like meet with me? And I'm doing like a pilot and, I'd love to support you. So I did that. And then also we took new nurses who were really struggling in their first year. And I remember that my
Hmm.
first few years as a nurse was not what I planned again, starting. It's just interesting how it kind of comes full circle because I said, I'm never going to do mental health. And then that's where I ended up starting in a very specific way. And it's kind of like, again, getting to do this now in a different way, but a more
Yeah.
impactful way. Starting with those new nurses, I remember being new and just that's how we started with a pilot. Took
Yeah.
a few from my unit that were struggling, a few from another unit, and it was like gung ho from there.
Yes. I remember this step by step. I'm going to recall what I can remember and then let you fill in
Yeah.
because I think it's just nice. But I remember you had the first initial meeting with your boss, and then you would have the next initial meeting with her boss. And then we were like worried about presentations and how long are they going to be and what should I say? And then it was okay, they gave you, I think, 8 hours first. Like
Hmm.
the first win was they gave you
Yeah.
8 hours, 8 paid hours to do this thing, right? And you had to create the forms. Like you were the
Hmm.
boss of the whole thing. But you coached. Who did you coach in your organization that loved it? I forget. There was like a turning point. Like someone experienced your coaching, and that was part of how the door opened, I think.
Yeah. And I think it was really, my manager, she's amazing. I think it was really her belief
Yeah.
in
Oh,
me,
what a good
obviously, is
manager.
that she's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
So it was that, but it was also kind of the hospital goals was really like that focus on team member wellness. And I think it was just
Yeah.
nationwide. So it was kind of the right time, right place
Right.
situation with the right modality and the way that, and it's funny when you talk about presentations because I had no presentation, no proposal, nothing. I remember talking about it, trying to come up with
Yeah.
something. And like one day I'm at work and she's like, oh, we're going to go meet with the administrator. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, all right. Oh my gosh, I have nothing. Right. And I honest, just was able to honestly express like, hey, this is just something that's really revived me personally going through this training because it really gets you in tune with
Oh, it
yourself,
does.
right? And
It
in
so
tune with your
does.
values, in tune with
Yes.
where you're going in life. And it just was so aligned. And that's just what I shared. And then again, the vision comes when you're solid there. And
Mm.
it's okay, well, what we're doing right now is not working. This is how our staff feels. And so I was just able to really be honest in that without having anything prepared. And that's really what it was. That was, I think, the inspiration was like, I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't already know.
You're
It's
just
already
reflecting.
truth. I'm just reflecting, right? From that peer relationship, this is why it's going to work. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're able to speak to that. You know, I mean, the simple, silly example is like why nurses, instead of charting, because they want to get off on time, but I'm just going to not take a break. I'm going to chart instead, with the false belief that you're going to get off on time. But we also know it's true is that you're never guaranteed. Code could happen right at the end of your shift, right? And you're there anyways.
Right.
But what is that? How does that impact you as a caregiver? How does that impact the team? And then how does that impact your patient care?
Yeah.
You know, and kind of really, again, understanding like after one little belief, but that's our habits, and that's how we've gotten into this place, you know, of burnout and frustration and all of that, because we think we have to. So you're kind of like working on this like cultural bedside lies, you know what I mean? These subtle things in the name of caring for other people. And we got ourselves into a mess. So we have to get ourselves out of it. And this is the only way. I think it's just spending the time with the people at the bedside who need to uncover these lies that we've kind of like walked in for so long and come back to what's actually true. How are we walking the lie out when we're on shift caring for people? But then how can you come back to what's true and then walking that? Because that's going to be the game changer for any healthcare system as a whole.
I mean, your voice just makes me feel better. You know, so what I think that what I want to highlight about you is I think your presence is what sold. It was who you were in that moment, on the spot, being honest, being direct in a way that nurse coach training taught you how to do. Yeah. Even just the way that you communicated in that moment was different than you would normally communicate, because I know I've talked to enough organizations now that are like, well, we have wellness programs where there's like wellness classes where it's like educational. It's just, we just need more information, Nicole, to change everything. And what you're saying is like, no, I think I need 2 hours a month and to find out exactly what the lie is, or the error, the thought error, the whatever is happening for that individual, which we have like global things, but I'm sure you found individual ones that were unique to each person that you like unwrapped. So, okay. So I remember that. And then you were getting busier. And I remember we were like, we got to get you more hours. And then it was just like one stage after another. And it just seemed to always work. Like the feedback was extraordinary from everybody. Do you want to kind of give maybe just a timeline of, okay, you went from working 8 hours per week and you were a 24-hour-a-week nurse. That was your position. And you were on a ortho floor, I think. Yeah. And then you went to, I think, that's a 16, and then eventually full-time, if I'm correct. Are you full-time still now?
Yeah. So, well, I'm still 24 hours. Technically, it's
full-time, part-time.
Full-time of all my hours. Not working more than 24 hours a week.
Yeah.
Can't do it lifestyle-wise right now. But yes. I mean, I would say it was probably about a year into where it was kind of like, okay, we can take you off the bedside and you can dedicate all time to this. So again, I think it just speaks to the power of transformation in these coaching sessions. Yes. You know? And I mean, data is kind of like, okay, yes, but what's, you know, the person's feedback, right? So what we're seeing is more of them coming out the other side, more confidence. Yeah. You know, less burnout, less anxiety, which is huge, you know. I mean, I've probably every single new nurse I've worked with is with the fear of harm. And they come on the bedside. That's the number one thing that I work with, and that really impacts their confidence level. And so, but I've noticed, you know, the patterns and the behaviors, you know, we're confident when my preceptor's here, but then, okay, now this is when. So really we focus with them for the first 6 months so that it takes them through their preceptorship. And while traditional new grad programs, right, they're like 12 weeks it's like a snap of the finger. It's so
Yeah.
fast. And then it's like,
Right.
okay, here you are. But that's where we have come in and filled in that gap and gave them the critical support in the first 3 months when they're on their own, because that's really when they need that
Yes.
one-to-one support. And I think that's why it's worked so well.
And are you just doing new grads right now still?
So right now, yes. So again, stages, right? We're 3 years
Yeah,
in, but
yeah.
we're stages, stages, stages. So
Right.
and again, so the pilot I did was with my unit and then one other unit. So
Mm-hmm.
the nurse manager of the other unit, she was like, oh my gosh, I love coaching too. Like, I want to get trained. So this kind of goes back into how we kind of like started building up a team, because again,
Right.
one person, we cannot. And so along the way, we ended up finding Bryce, who she was kind of like separately going through nurse coach training. And we like found each other along the way, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this
You
thing,
too?
implementing. And then
Yeah.
she's like on the third floor. So I'm like, great, when you're done, you take the third floor, I'll take the fourth floor. But while we were kind of
Yeah.
building a team. But the manager of the other one, she's like, I want to get trained. So she went through and got trained too. And we had to go get funding, from our hospital organization. But now I can say progress wise, we're to the point where I'm sending a fourth cohort through training.
Yeah.
Actually, they start next week. No,
So-
2 weeks. Yeah. So, and this will now cover, so we're a 17 hospital organization and
Mhm.
building and growing. So I think they have
Yeah.
an 18th one in training, but we are at
How
this.
many nurse coaches if this is the fourth cohort?
I think right now we've got I think 25
Why,
in
way to
our
go.
west region. So that covers 5 hospitals,
Okay.
25 that have kind of graduated, and then we have gotten 3 other hospitals up and running, including myself,
Oh my
this first
goodness.
quarter of this year. So we're working on it, getting our last one up and running here.
Yeah.
And then we're going to the east side. So we're recruiting. So those will be our next ones coming through. And we have 28 spots for our East Region hospitals, and that'll cover
That's so awesome.
all of the whole system by the end. So yeah, we're building, like I said, we're kind of at the new grad stage right now. And there's a
Right.
lot of things organizationally that they're kind of coming down the pipe, where East Region has kind of been piloting some stuff that just like fits like a glove with ours. So I think the way that we've designed the program is to really, again, fill in that gap. What's already working well, like these new residency programs. Almost every hospital probably countrywide is probably pretty standard with
Right.
having new grad
Yeah.
programs, but we're filling in that critical first 3 months where either
Oh,
they get too overwhelmed and they run away or go back to school. Those are kind of those 2 things that
yeah.
I'm noticing. Filling in that gap, I think, has been, crucial in that they're not only coming out more confident, but they also have that growth mindset, because we coach right
Yeah.
into that. So
Yes.
they're handling their stress a lot different. And it's showing in the work, but it's also showing in the teamwork, that
Yeah.
experience, but it's showing in that they're retaining, they're staying
Yeah.
like a
Right.
year, and they're still on their same unit. They're not like,
Yes.
there's a lot
And
less
that's important.
exiting.
Yeah.
Super.
Because if we can show that a nurse coach department saves a specific amount of dollars, then it's really easy and really it's compelling to organizations to then start to make this a part of their program. And I agree. I remember I was a new grad at 30. Nursing was my second career. I don't know how the 21 and 22-year-old graduates were like going and holding lives in their hands. Like I was at the club 4 nights a week when I was 21. Like I just was so immature even at 30. And I remember going right into ICU, into a new grad program. It was an hour commute. And I had gotten pregnant with my first child during my residency. So I was commuting an hour, working 12 and a half, and then an hour home in my first trimester, second trimester. And I flew solo in my second trimester. And it was the insanity of what it was for me to have that much stress, be newly pregnant, to be commuting that long. And the way that the lunches were, I would go 6, 7 hours without eating as like a pregnant person. If I had had a nurse coach, if I had had anybody, because I just thought there's something wrong with me. Like I just needed to suck it up. Like I just felt like I wasn't doing a good job. Like it shouldn't have been that hard. I remember having like a needle stick and like not wanting to tell anybody. Like there was there was no one to go to. And it wasn't that I needed more skill or education. I needed the emotional regulation. I needed somebody to say, it is normal for you to feel the way that you feel. And at any time, if you feel unsafe, here's 3 options that you have. Like it would have, I left that hospital when after I gave birth. I didn't want to go back. So they lost me, right? They put all that money and training into me. And I think about that. Like that sucks. You know, that sucks. They put all that money and training into me, and I didn't have the tools to come back from leave. So I think that's huge. And from the other organizations I've talked to, it's like the biggest need is new grad or year one. And then the second emerging need is the year 2 to 5, where there's that second wave of people go, you know, nurses, essentially, they want to keep growing. They usually feel stuck. They go back to school or they want to go train on a new unit or they want to, right? It's usually not about money, or it's personal and it's just kind of like the culture here, it just feels a certain way and I just need a change, but then they go someplace else and the same thing happens. So I can see there's like different places for nurse coaching to have a real big impact on the bottom line for an organization. But I think that new grads in that first year is like, obviously, just like your organization has done, is the best. What are some of the metrics that you have, even though it's not published yet? But I know people want to, I know a lot of nurse coaches are like, can I have some data? Now I have a meeting with my boss, like Nicole did.
Yeah. And I think that's part of going first, because you don't have any. And I will just kind of say briefly, just in the process of right now, we're kind of in the process of retroactively kind of doing what we, like writing about what we've done.
Right.
And so of course in that process we found little kinks, and we found that when they reach they have like certain amount of like criteria that they have to do kind of within their first year before they become like the next stage of a nurse.
Right.
And so we found along the way is that, they're like, when they meet that, then they're no longer considered resident, so that they fall.
Yeah.
So we're still kind of trying to figure out the data of all of the retroactive. So we don't have anything like the solid, like I can't tell you like the solid numbers or anything right now. But I can say that we system-wide, since we had implemented the nurse coaching, that we were out of the entire 17 hospitals, our hospital specifically was like lowest turnover for that population. And so now that we have more hospitals involved this year, so we just started, like I said, beginning of 2025. So by the end of this year, we should really be able to see then, now that we've had these units or these hospitals supported, what is theirs actually look like. So so going first, we've made a lot of changes since then, as far as the surveys and what we used before. Again, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's just make something up. So we made something up, and with a focus on, burnout and kind of like their, well-being, how they're kind of getting acclimated to their teams and their units. And then since then, we've streamlined it and kind of made some changes for 2025. So the first on the agenda is the retroactive. I'm hoping to have that done. I mean, and again, it's been kind of like a slow process because again, we're doing this on top of everybody's normal
launching
positions.
And
it's kind of been like that. It feels like the snail pace, but yet there's been massive growth, if that makes sense. So while everybody's eager, like, show us all of the things, like, we will.
Yeah.
But here's how it is right now.
And I think you and Jen Mall, I interviewed Jen as well. And you and Jen, after a year, your organizations had the lowest turnover in the system. So there's like, that's cool. Like, that's a cool, like, solid thing that doesn't take a whole lot of KPIs and it's just pretty easy to see. So I love that. I love sharing about that. But I also, like you were saying, when you go first, when you innovate, someone has to take a risk. We don't have the data yet. 10 years from now, we will have oodles of data and published studies and refined published studies. And it works better with this amount of sessions versus this amount of sessions. And like there's so many like variables, just like in a business, that you're going to iterate and it's going to get better and it's going to get easier for people to come after you. But we're still in that innovative phase, right? Like we're still new.
Yeah, and just to piggyback kind of what I was going to say anyways, in the process of kind of doing this retroactive, like you have to we're going through the IRB process. So working with our research department anyway. And so part of that is you have to go and see what other literature is out there.
Yeah. And I've been doing that.
Hundreds and hundreds of things to get through. And I think we narrowed it down to like, there's only really like maybe 3 at the most that are like semi-similar to what we're doing. So again, we're going first. There's not a lot, so you're not going to find a lot out there yet. And I think it's going to look different too. You know, I mean, I've definitely had plenty of conversation with Jen along, you know, since she's been kind of doing her thing and I've been doing my thing, but like they're slightly different just because our roles are different. Our hospital systems are different. And so it's going to look different in each part of the country even.
Right.
And it's just really, I think, having to tailor it to the needs of your employees and the needs of your organization. And then pivot, you know, as needed. And that's, you know, what we've done. But lowest turnover. Something's happening.
Yeah.
And they keep coming. So that's another thing too.
They coming to your organization. Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, there's the human part, right? There's the part that is hard to show on a spreadsheet and the human part of safety. Like when a new nurse is not as anxious, when a new nurse is in growth mindset, you are safer. You are like there is probably outpatient outcomes that have been affected, I'm sure of it, by nurse coaching. It's harder to measure, right? It's harder to measure those because I just think about the confidence of being able to ask for what you need, regulating your nervous system, not having to use drugs or alcohol on your days off to like deal with it. Like all these like things that I've seen in nursing that have gone up. I think we have the newest data is that 33% of nurses plan on leaving nursing completely in the next year. So like 1/3 of every nurse working right now has a plan, like an exit plan. That's up from 11% pre-pandemic. That's gone up 22%. And that's like cumulative, like all these different things and has all these downstream implications. But coach training and then just being supported by a coach there's like so much good that can be done with so little resources. Let me ask you this. For your new grads, you were meeting with them twice a
month. Yep.
On their day off?
Yep. So it's on their day off.
Yes. You have to be.
You cannot be, your brain has to be focused on you.
Off.
You cannot be on assignment, worried about your assignment, having phone calls and trying to focus on your own
right
self.
Beautiful. So we're mandatory for you guys.
So we're making it as part of their onboarding. So again, we're coming up alongside the traditional nurse residency program, but we again kind of filling in that gap of, like you said, skills, cool, education, fine, but we need to focus on the person in their transition into practice, the mental, the emotional, the physical needs, the spiritual needs, their environment, their thought life, their thinking capacity, all of those things that drive the action and the experience. So that's more of our focus, is really filling in that. Like you said, I wish I would have had this when I was same thing. Like when I was going through really a season of struggle in my career too, same thing. It was, I could have really used somebody. And so being able to be that space for somebody when they're going through a hard thing, like that's just so fulfilling and like it enriches like my career, you know, or my purpose. It's like, okay, this is why I became a nurse. Like I get to do all those things, but it's really being able to kind of take it to a deeper level too of that more true to the profession of nursing as a whole. Like I think we've just gotten so far away that's contributing to the 33%, like, oh, well,
Yeah.
that doesn't look like my experience doesn't match what I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
And since COVID, right, even the transitions, like over the past 5 years, like how different the environment is, right?
Yeah.
Culture. I mean, there's so many things at play, but the heart of a nurse is really that relationship piece with their patients. And that's the thing that's really missing. And I know it was for me, where I'm like, I don't want to just
Yes.
hand out pills and like have this conveyor belt of patients, like
Yes.
I want to like spend time with them and get to know them and really help them. I think that's just the core and the heart of nursing, right?
Yeah.
And so I really feel that there's a call to return back to that in some ways. But of course, now we have all
Yeah.
this technology. But how do you take all of the resources that we have, but keep the relationship first and foremost and centered? Because that's really where healing lies. It's not with procedures, medical things.
Absolutely.
It's the relationship. It's I want to be loved. I want to be valued. My thinking, again, creates an action, but it also has a physiological effect,
Yes.
on our bodies, our spirits, our mental health, our emotional health. It's all deeply connected. And if we can get our providers to really know that personally, they're going to be so much more in tune. And I work with my new grads a lot with this too. Like, and this is why, in our initial sessions, I'm like, I'm going to ask you about all areas of your life, because I want you to see
Yes.
how they're connected, why they're connected. I mean, throw the term mental health out there to any nurse, and what's the first thing you think of? Disorders.
Yeah.
We're trained to like view them as
Look
disorders,
for
and like
what's wrong.
it's a continuum, right? We all as humans going to experience anxiety. We're all going to probably fit the diagnoses at some point.
Yes.
But that's not who you are. It's okay, you need to let's get you over to this continuum with joy and peace and purpose and passion and, love for life. And so even just presenting it that way, and why, even knowing like your relationship to your emotions, like we're all going to experience anger. We're all going to experience frustration. We're all going to be, experience that love and that joy. Like, again, right? And you can have that at the bedside. But again, if you're living in this state too of like, okay, well, for me personally, you could say in some ways our work environment or workflow has kind of trained us to like shove the emotions aside because you've got to go on. So there's never like really fully processing our experiences as nurses at the bedside. I mean, we witness suffering.
Yeah.
Front row seat to that. And that can get really uncomfortable, right? And so again, a nurse who's walked into a room with maybe a patient just got a diagnosis and they're wrecked by that, and you walk in, you're like, I don't have time to get into that because I got all these tasks to complete. So they might shy away and be like, do you want a med? You know what I mean? Like, or a thing, but that's not true healing. Like maybe they don't need that. They need your presence, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why the importance too of nurse coaching for providers, is really like being able to be in tuned in that moment. Like, what is your patient actually needing? And because I believe full on that's going to shift outcomes too.
It does.
Belief shifts everything.
Well, placebo is one of the most powerful drugs in the world. Even like we have so many studies on placebo, and it doesn't take a whole lot. It's like the way that you would deal. I'll give you an example. This is like such a great example. I use this all the time with my students too. One of my favorite roles was a PACU nurse, and it was ambulatory surgery. So primarily healthy human beings having a knee replacement or a rotator cuff tear, like those kind of surgeries, and they're coming out of surgery and they've had nerve blocks and we're giving them meds. And there was one nurse on our unit that would ask every patient, are you nauseous? How bad is your pain? And they would always be nauseous and their pain would always be high. And then she'd always medicate both of them. And then those patients would have the worst outcome, the worst pain management, and be there the longest. And for me, just noted, like I did this one little thing when they came out, I'm like, you look so great. You handled your anesthesia so well. I was like, we're going to give you a strong pain medicine right out the gate so that you're going to have not that much pain, same amount. It's just the way that I would frame it. None of my clients threw up. None of them needed like nausea medication. None of them needed more like I just set them up in that suggestible state that they were doing so well and they weren't going to have as much pain. And I had like the best outcomes. And I just realized at that moment the human mind. And so I think that can go such a long way. And like you were saying, as a new grad nurse on the floor, your biggest fear is to do harm. Maybe you don't feel like, I did never feel like I belonged there. I felt like I cheated to get in. And like, if they knew how like not competent I was, they would never hire me. But I have student loans I have to pay back. And this was like what was going in my head all the time. And it would have been 1 hour conversation. And I probably could have completely changed that and not suffered for so many months with that ruminating thought of that, right? Like of just reframing it. You probably are an expert at that particular moment by now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so common. It's probably like the most number one, number two things that I coach around, that and confidence, it's just, I cannot stress the importance of like like having that ear and what we've learned too along the way is even having a coach who's not on your unit is even more powerful, because we have run into situations where like sometimes the coach is the charge nurse. And so now you're a charge nurse role instead of coach client. So you just, I mean, the power of having that open, free to be you, all of you with whatever it is that you're experiencing, and have nobody be tied, but you're also a peer in that nobody else knows the heart and mind of a nurse than another nurse. Like
right, a
therapist. I say that all
therapist.
the time. You can go, we have counseling. This is our current wellness, employee wellness programs, right? You have access to counseling, you have access to therapy. It's not the same thing, because I'm gonna, as a nurse coach, gonna help you work through the common beliefs, because I'm gonna speak your mind to you. Because if you thought it, I've thought it. If you've done it, I've done it too.
Yeah.
And so
it's
just
different dynamic.
Drop the shoulder. Yeah. You get the sigh release, and then they again, that power of the relationship. It's like, okay, I can just come here. I can let it all out here. I can work through this stuff. And then we come back, right? How did that go? What was your, your goal?
How did it go?
How did it go? What things did you try? What things did you notice was good? What wasn't? What do you want to try differently? But it's just, I love
can't wait. Well, they probably can't wait to even come back to you, right? So you have a coaching conversation, they go work 2-3 weeks, and then and I could just imagine then on their shift doing things, being like, oh my God, Nicole's gonna be so proud of me. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell Nicole about this. Like I had this thought, I'm making this progress. Like I know for myself, I had a counselor during nursing school. I'd gone through a really bad breakup during nursing school. And the whole time I was like, how much should I disclose? Because they're going to like put me on medication. Like it was almost a fear of being too vulnerable about how I was actually feeling, because I knew that they were looking for pathology.
Yeah.
And so coaching's so different, because we're already looking at them. You've got this. These are all motivational interviewing and thought work and cognitive behavioral therapy tools, like cognitive distortions. Like there's these just really, really predictable things that we know that they're thinking and doing and suffering from, that a therapist and counselor, it may not hit the same way, right? It may not feel the same way. So lucky little new grads. What lucky new grads at your organization.
Yes. Like I said, I wish I would have had this way back when. Where
do you see this going? You guys are going to be fully kind of staffed and have nurse coaches for all the floors. And so and then you'll be just like iterating, but where do you see it going? Like moving from new grads to what, or what has been some of the conversations?
Well, the number one thing that we always get asked is, can this be available to all staff? So all nurses, or is it only new grads?
Right.
Or even like some of our nurse leaders, like, hey, so-and-so, like you mentioned, as in maybe they're not technically resident status anymore, but they're still a newer nurse, or they've come from another facility.
Yes. Transitioning.
Transitions. Yeah. Or even like, hey, they've been a nurse for a little bit over somewhere else, but now they're here and they're struggling, or life just happens, right?
Yes.
Transitions. Exactly. Things happen.
Yeah.
Or you're taking care of the big big part too, which we've kind of tapped into this a little bit, is the conversation around the workplace violence issues at the bedside. And there's been a lot of that. I know there was a big story. I don't know if you heard of it. There's a big story in Florida, I think it was West Palm or something. It's a big conversation there. And so we initially had kind of started supporting some of those nurses, and then started kind of, well, let's tailor it to just new nurses first. So I'd love to get back into that conversation again too, because I did have the privilege of supporting, I think, 3 that experienced workplace violence, and these were seasoned, experienced nurses, and how traumatic that event was. I mean, their feedback was like, I'm so grateful that you were able to sit with me through this, but they were all ready to walk because that traumatic, and they stayed. Did one of them was a ICU nurse, and she ended up kind of, that was the straw, right?
Yes.
Stayed, but decided, you know what, it's time to leave ICU, but I'm going to stay within the organization. So we didn't lose her completely.
Yeah.
But she went back, she tried, but same thing, like we've all experienced trauma in different ways in working in that environment. And I think the big thing is that I've personally experienced too, is just kind of this moral trauma that nobody talks about. It's easy to talk about physical things, or even
from a spiritual standpoint, where
for sure
it's, I remember just thinking, you just witness disparities. You just witness the human experience in ways that, I mean, first responders do, military, but we are front row seat to life and death and awful dynamics and deep, deep pain. And then getting in our car and going home to our family and like going to cook a healthy dinner and maybe hit the gym. And it's just like this, like not talking about that, and like the way that you cope with that is usually compartmentalization. And then 6 months goes by and all of a sudden you have insomnia, and then you're diagnosed with depression, and then you have anxiety, and then you blame, and then you want to change jobs. And it's like, it wouldn't have taken much to like stop that cascade. Absolutely.
So I would love to see it go back into that, that at least as a next step, or the struggling burnout nurse.
Yeah.
To expand on that.
Any group stuff or just one-to-one?
Right now, group stuff. I did some group, or I mean, I'm sorry, one-to-ones. Right now, one-to-ones. We have, in our first pilot I did a little group stuff, and we would like to, I think that's going to be really powerful. I mean, I would love to do that in the future. I would love to see coaching end up in partnership with our outpatient physicians. I think that is where we're really going to see the power of nursing really, take off. But like the health and the wellness of like communities being healed and restored, I think is really, that was kind of my initial dream. Like not only to get this in support of our caregivers in the hospital, but like ultimately take these to, you go to the doctor, you get adjusted or you get a diagnosis or whatever. We know that it's the lifestyle, right? And nurses are just so talented. We're natural coaches when it comes to like lifestyle stuff, because it's how we're trained, right? So I would love to see that go into our outpatient settings. I mean, I think it's going to be a big project and a lot of work. I don't think it's impossible, because there are insurance companies that will hire coaches, right?
Yes. I just talked to somebody who's doing that. Their program is extraordinary. It is in Texas. I need to get more data. I have a meeting with the supervisor of that program, and it is extraordinary. So it's mostly phone coaching with patients. And they're full-time nurse coaches, 40 hours a week. And then they have a caseload, I think, of like 100 patients. And they have like text check-in, like 30-minute calls. Like they have like this hybrid. And then like the outcomes have been extraordinary.
Yeah.
Like so different than case management, because it's just a different relationship,
Yes.
And I was like, this is so cool. And then what a cool role that nurse coaches could, and then this is all, it's virtual. So this is like a work from home coach position. But I'm seeing like these innovative things pop up. And what I find with coaching is that it a little bit goes a long way And I think it's that human connection. It's the relationship. It's the power of the coaching container. And it just is far reaching. I have one more question for you. With all of your, you've been coaching for 3 years. You've coached so many nurses. What about their personal life? Have they reported any changes in outside of work?
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'm a mom too,
Mm-hmm.
2 little ones. Um, and so it's really cool how you get to kind of like get in these conversations, with like, hey, I've walked there too. I've been on maternity leave and come back as well, and trying to do your job. But yes, relationships. So
Mm-hmm.
specifically, like we work on like communication skills and stuff.
Yes.
So, and just even your thinking, and it's like, because I'll ask like, well, where else do you notice this type of pattern?
Right.
And a lot of it is
Yeah.
in personal relationships outside of here. So we have seen, growth in that area too, or
Mm-hmm.
marriages, their relationship with their partner, even with the kids, right? And kind of
Yes.
like being a nurse, caregiving at home and doing it at home or at work and at home, and you're always on, and kind of like even just the role of the nurse, but then also the role, like your true role as a mom too, and like learning
Yeah.
to kind of like where the specifically with like control, right?
Yes.
Like that's huge, like for moms and kids. And so I know like for myself, it's really like that had been kind of uncovered and revealed as I was going to like, oh my gosh, like I control out of fear, right? And so
Yeah.
we get in these parent-child relationships at work with our patients, and you see the patient follow suit. Like all of a sudden we're alert and oriented, and all of a sudden they can't do anything for themselves. We've all had those
Right.
experiences, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's the parent-child relationship. And like being able to connect that, but like, how do you do that at home with your kids too?
Yeah.
So it's really cool. Yes, we've definitely had conversations about um, a lot of personal stuff,
Mm-hmm.
relationships. I mean, it's all relationships, right? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's been
Yeah.
really
I think
fun.
Florence Nightingale would have been down with the nurse coach movement. I think that it's a way to bring caring and human presence and the scientific data that surrounds that as a key piece instead of it being where you can fit it in if you're not too busy and if you have charted. There's some way like slowing down to speed up and like slowing down and creating more spaciousness to have more effectiveness and more efficiency. And it's so counterintuitive. And I think nurse coaching, it kind of shows you where all the wasted energy is in your thoughts and in the way that you
Yeah.
move in the world and in the way that you think about your shift before you get there,
Mm.
in the way that you think about your shift before you go to bed at night, in the way that you think about your shift after you're home and you're reviewing it and you're trying to make sure that you haven't made mistakes. And it's like these patterns where we aren't off work. We are at work until we have like a 4 days off. And then in that 4 days off, we're numbing, just trying to regulate our nervous system.
Yeah.
It's like these unsustainable things that we get into and we're just so unaware and we don't have resources. And I think that like early in your nursing career, finding some of those resources will create a workforce of nurses that don't want to leave and find fulfillment and enjoyment in going to work and taking care of people. So thank you so much we talked for a whole hour, I think, Nicole. It's so
Time passed.
you. It does. And I wanted to reflect back to you too and just tell the audience listening. I remember so specifically every stage of this when you started and you were afraid to speak in front of people.
Mhm.
And it was like every time you had a fear, like a huge wall of fear, I mean, it didn't let up. You were constantly leaning into your fear. And then it would always go better than you thought. And then another door would open. And then over that period of time, like your whole self concept has shifted, and you're kind of like this quiet, empathetic, but firmly grounded presence in your organization. You started this in however many, how many hospitals with how many units. Like that's a huge impact in the world. And so I just
Yeah.
really want to celebrate you for that. And I was grateful to get to be your mentor as that all unfolded, just to see it all. It was unexpected. And we both really didn't know. Like, well, I guess we'll just do this and then we could try this and have this conversation. It's a whole lot of fun. Awesome. And then are you coaching any other nurse coaches right now? Like, do you have a few private clients that you support in this endeavor?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Great. You hear that, guys? So she doesn't have all the time in the world, but you've been so gracious with answering questions, and I'll likely put this episode in the course for people to listen to. And we're just trying to create as many resources as we can at scale for all the nurses that are going to go do what you already did. And thanks to you, it'll be easier for them. So.
And it's so encouraging just hearing too, like all of the personal inspiration to like go and do this, but like to hear other people are doing it too is just like that much more encouraging. Like,
yeah, absolutely. We're just getting started. We got 10 more years. We got 10 more years in us. All right, Nicole. Well, thanks guys for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to respond and message us. And I'll have Nicole's info in the show notes if you want to follow her and follow her journey. And thank you so much, Nicole.
thanks, Laura.